YouTubers, my name is Martin Gardrup and today I'm going to show you how to do some basic API requests with Python against Cisco's SD-WAN. And for this you're going to need an IDE or Python, and you're also going to need some basic knowledge of networking. Hopefully I will sort out the rest for you. So let's dig in. In this tutorial I'm going to use PyCharm as my IDE to make my Python calls, and for this request we are going to need as well to import requests. How we do that is to download requests if we are using PyCharm in this case. We hit the plus button, we search for requests and we download the package. Since I've already done this, I already got the package, and that makes us able to import the request step. So we start by importing requests and JSON. Import requests and import JSON. After that we need to point to an URL where we're actually going to log in. So we're saving that URL in attribute. Let's call it login URL, for example, and that's going to point to the address of our sandbox. This may vary depending on your setup, but we are going to send the actual username and password to jsecurity check, and that's the page in SD-WAN that actually takes the login and checks if we are allowed to log in or not. We also want to save our username and password in a credential, in an attribute. So let's make a login credentials, and we want to send our username and password, so let's call it and that data is called username. Our username is temp in this case. We also want to send a password. They want it as jpassword, and in our case we name the password as temp. That is actually going to be the data we are going to send in our session. I also want to create a little bit of easier syntax for myself, so I'm going to say session is equals to requests session. It makes the code a little bit easier to type. Now we're actually going to do the login, and we want to save the response back from when we have sent the login to the page. So let's call that one response from login, for example. Response login, and we want to do a session with a post, since we are actually posting our username and password to our nice URL here. And in our post we want to send an URL. The URL is going to be our login URL. We also want to attach some data, and our data is going to be our login credentials. What more do we want? We want to do, since the page is an HTTPS page, we actually want to disable the certificate check, and that we do by doing a verify false. If we don't do that, we're going to have issues with actually doing the login. We can also check what response we are getting. Response from the login, and let's have a go. We are getting a certificate warning since my client haven't actually added this certificate. It's saying, okay, this is a non-trusted certificate, but we are getting a HTTP 200 back, and that seems good in our case. So we are actually posting our username and password to this page. But we want to do some more. We want to actually get some data as well. So let's point to the URL where we're actually fetching the data from. Let's do a get URL, and in my case that's going to be from 10.10.20.90 colon H443. We are going to fetch it from data service device. We can actually find all of this information from the API docs. So if we browser over to our SD-WAN page, and then we go to the API docs section, we can actually find all of the APIs we can imagine. In my case, I actually just want to fetch the devices in this case. And that's why we add the device to our URL. So we are asking for this URL. Then we go back. Now we have collected some data, but we haven't actually fetched it from the page yet. We have only... So now we have the URL here, but we haven't actually made the get from the session yet. So we want to do similar like the post before. We are doing a response, and this can be called whatever you like, but to make it a bit more understandable, I'm calling them response login and response get, to actually be able to remember what we actually collected in that variable. So let's do a session get, and what do we want to send in this session? We want to send a URL, like we call URL get from here. And since we already have logged in against the API, we don't need to do that again. The only thing we need to do again is actually to do the verify false, since the certificate is still there on the page. Now this is going to collect the data, but that won't be presented yet. So we actually want to do some response get, and we want to fill with that data. In our case, we are going to get it in JSON format, and we want to load that data. Response get, and we want the content from that one. And now we can try to do a print, and we want the JSON dumps from response get. We can also make this a little bit easier to view what's actually inside it. We can do indent for and sort keys. I'm mistyping a lot. I hope you bear with me. And close parenthesis. Let's have a go and see if we can get some data from this one. It seems like we were able to actually fetch something. Let's scroll up a bit. We're having some vManage device, vSmart, but let's see if we can show it some easier way. For device in response, so we're playing with our values who are actually saved in response get, And from that one, we want to go under data. And we want to print the things that is under the device. And we want to get the host name, and we maybe want some more here. What could be fun to see? We can see the device local system IP, for example, and one more. We want the device. Why don't we take the UID? All of this we can actually get by digging into the data like we're having here, and then we want to pull in our example I'm getting the host name, so we say we want the host name field, we also want the local system IP, and we want the device UUID. So let's have a go and see what we're actually getting. So first we are printing our actually HTTP response up here. Then we are printing all of the JSON we are collecting. And then in the end, we're actually getting our host names, local IPs, and UUID. So that's how easy it is to actually collect data from the SD-WAN. I hope you learned something, and if you liked, please like and subscribe. And if you want some other content or doing it with Postman or anything, please reach out in the comments.